o'clock, so this is our informational meeting about the budget. So it's a chance for you folks to ask questions and answer what you need information or whatever you have. So if anyone wants to start, if they have a question, feel free to do that.
And if not, we can sit and visit with our neighbors for the next hour.
Yes.
I guess I'll start then.
Okay.
Why so much?
You mean total budget?
Why so much over budget?
I think if you look at the page that has explanation of articles that looks like this, it will tell you what each article specifically is about. We have contracts with our support staff and our teachers that have automatic increases in them. Health insurance went up 13.8%, which is a substantial increase for our district. Out of legislature came the new law that we have today, ed techs and support staff, 125% more than minimum wage for ed techs and 115% for support staff. Unfortunately, that had a trickle up effect for our support staff because it took us a long time to get to what $18.61 was going to be, which next year will be the base pay for an ed tech 1. So that did increase the budget substantially. We have increases in our property insurance that are between 15 and 20%. A lot of factors that we have no control over. We have a school resource officer for next year in the budget that was not in last year's budget. Thanks to grant money, he was pretty much covered for this half of the year that we had him this year. And a portion of that had to go to our budget for next year. I'm sure you all would agree how nice it is to see him managing traffic in the morning outside, down here outside of MES. And there's got a bike right there in the back seat.
Yes.
So we do appreciate him. Among other things, that's not his primary job, but it's one that everybody does notice. Cost of living is going up. Everything that we buy, power, fuel, all of that goes up. We're honestly at where we consider bare bones for what we have for staff. And we have cut some things out. I mean, we started out with a budget that had a more increase than this, to be honest with you. So we worked hard to look in every nook and cranny to come up with a budget that we can.
So it's an increase of over $2.9 million, almost $3 million. Is that?
No. Right. If you look on this page that looks like this, you see the budget increase actually is $478,754.60. But the actual increase to the taxpayer, if you go down in the next box, or the increase to the town, is $168,675.02.
And what's the minimum that the state, what's the minimum required that the state would contribute?
Well, if you look up in the top box, you'll see what the state allocation is. And then if you look down in the bottom box, you see what the local, other local contribution is in allocation. So the state is giving us more than you're paying, let's just put it that way, by a lot.
How is the state giving more than the town is paying if the town's paying $5.4 million of its $11.8 million budget?
Okay, I stand corrected then. The local is $5 million. Got down the two together.
I was curious if there was any surplus left over that you could use to defray some of the taxes. We've done that in the past.
We did bring balance forward of $1 million.
I saw that. I just didn't know how much you had to work with.
Right. Well, I'm sure you know that each time the more you bring forward, the more you're gonna have to bring forward next year to keep it even. So at some point in time, you reach a cliff where you fall off and there's no money more to bring. The state has allowed us to have a 9% fund balance, undesignated fund balance, and right now, we're supposed to go back to 5, but there's legislature, I guess, that's gonna continue to shift it up to 9. I'm told that ought to pass. Mr. Dushan, can you give us any insight on that?
I don't know. I haven't heard that. All I know is that the state's continuing, we've committed to 55% EPA.
Right.
Now, but that's 55% across. So what percent are we receiving?
Always help. This is why we have hard.
I know.
So, Julie, you will see that there's an article, I think it's which one is the 300,000? But you'll see on the next to the last page that we've asked to establish a capital reserve fund for 300,000 that can be used for expenses that are above and beyond the budget, or next year to be rolled into the budget if we don't use it.
The state is funding 66% of EPS.
Is the 9% of the total proposed budget, is that what they're proposing?
Yes.
I'm not on education, so it hasn't come to appropriate yet, so.
9% of the total budget to be kept in undesignated fund balance.
So you're looking at,
So when you have a $11.3 million budget, which is what we're finishing up right now, state statute allows a school district to keep 9% of that $11.3 million as surplus or undesignated fund balance. So that works out to $1.1 million, somewhere around there, that a town or a school district is allowed to keep. I think through COVID, and I've talked about this a lot during board meetings, I think during COVID, we saw that undesignated fund balance go up closer to 20% of our budget. So if we're trying to keep it close to $1 million, $1.1 million, we've probably got $2.3 million there. And every time you see in the budget, carry forward, balance forward, $900,000 million, that's what you're proposing to use from that. But just like with every town and county and school, you can propose to use that and put that number on paper, but you don't know what you're going to spend of it until the year is closed. So if I could just address the 65% of EPS. EPS is essential programs and services. So when the state looks at your school district and the state says, according to our calculations and your town's valuation and your student population, your school budget should be $7.5 million. And it's a lot of fairy dust, because no school district can operate for the amount of money that the state puts together in their EPS. So when the state says, we're going to fund you 65%, so they're going to pay $5 million toward that $7.5 million. But our budget that we create, because of the certain costs that we have that aren't taken into consideration, our budget's higher than that, than $7.5 million. Our budget proposed tonight is $11.8 million. So the town has to pick up the difference over that essential programs and services, over that EPS budget. So that's why we come to you with these two numbers that you have to add together. The local allocation from the state, when they do theirs, is the bottom number on this page, 2.5 $2.16 million. And then the other local, 2.932, that's the difference from what the state says our budget should be in theory and what the budget actually is proposed. So every year when you come to this meeting, you're voting for those two amounts that are responsible by the town. You're voting for those two amounts combined. I sat over on that side for a long time. There's a lot of questions you should be asking.
I'm trying.
Denise,
Can you explain what the state is looking at when they say you should be around 7.8 million, but we're at $4 million more than that?
I can. It's really driven by student population. If your student population continues to go down, all those numbers feed into that state formula. And that state formula is based on student population and ratios. How many principals should you carry for 540 students? How many teachers in grade 1, 2, 3, 4, all of that. All of that's into this formula, which doesn't take into consideration the fact that we moved grades up to the senior high. So that's why we are sharing principal positions up there, where we have a lead principal, and then we have a principal who also does the AD work for the athletic director. So all these things that we adjust at the local level, the state formula doesn't take into consideration. So every time you exceed the state formula's number, they kind of dock you for it in that EBS.
and they do not pay anything for extracurricular. That's 100% of the taxpayer.
Just so you know, the EPS formula, everybody acknowledges it's broken. We just got a study from prior session that they're looking at now to try and figure out all of these little, where they pulled a string here and it affected something over here and then somebody pulled it back. There's a whole lot of that stuff in the EPS formula, so more to come on that
Right,
next year.
and it's scary for us because I've sat in on a couple of those meetings, and we could lose as much as $500 a day with the new concept that they're coming up with. So I'd rather stay with the broken that we have right now than lose $500 a child
If it passes.
if it passes. Denise,
What is the current student-teacher ratio?
it depends on the grade level. I can tell you that for most grades, we have three teachers per grade level. Kindergarten and first grade, we don't, we have 2. Right now, first grade has 36, so with 3 teachers, about 13 per student, per grade. Second grade has 43, so the number's a little higher. Third grade is one of our low grade levels, they have 31. Fourth grade has 42, fifth grade 48, sixth grade 37, seventh grade 40, eighth grade 25, ninth grade 50, 10th grade 42, 11th grade 31, and 12th grade 43.
So what is the average if you have X number of students and X number of teachers?
I'm going to say 14 to 15. We're going to average that. We did eliminate a position at MES because we felt that we could manage with the current teachers that would be there. We had a teacher that retired and we are not filling that position. We eliminated a position here at the high school, the middle school, and we eliminated a position this year at the high school. So we are very cognizant of trying to keep ratios appropriate and not be overburdening. But you got to remember at the high school, every time we cut a teacher, we're cutting the opportunity for electives for kids. So that's where we're at.
Thank you.
I will say, Denise, I often ask that student ratio question, and I learn more on this side of it. COVID really skewed with those numbers because your class sizes got smaller during that time, and we had available money to bring in edX and so forth. And now as you phase out of that, you got to realize, there are some benefits to some of the smaller class sizes, especially when you realize that out of our 540 students, 270 of them receive some sort of special ed. Now, that doesn't mean half our students are all special ed kids, but they do receive some sort of special ed service, whether it be language skills and that sort of thing up to the more severe. So that's why we carry a large number of ed techs. I asked the question several times, why do we carry so many ed techs? In that EPS formula, the state doesn't give you more than a handful of ed techs. And so we're always going to be over on that because of our special ed needs. That's one of the problems with the EPS is they don't really address the differing special ed needs from district to district.
Does Madison have one of the higher special ed needs programs in the area?
I think most of Somerset, in my opinion, I think most of Somerset County is in the same boat.
I think they've all in a similar range, would you say, Nikki? Most of them?
Yeah, we have, we have 110 identified students right now, so I don't know if you're thinking,
I'm going off that sheet you gave us that,
Yeah,
of every
that-
grade that receives some services.
yeah, and I think, yes, but some are combined.
Right.
So it's not the amount of kids, it's just the amount of services. Yes, we have about 110 students. We have 2 programs at each school, and that over time has gone from 3 programs at each school to 2 programs at each school. So we have reduced numbers also in staff as we can, but the needs are much higher within the classrooms than they were in previous years. There's been drastic changes just in the last 10, I would say.
And something we always talk about is the money that we have to put in for out-of-district placement for special ed. There's no guarantee. You don't know. We reserve usually 2 spots, or a cost for 2 spots, because we don't know who's going to move in, we don't know who's going to need that out-of-district placement. And that's $100,000 easy a child. So sometimes that's where a little bit of the carry forward money comes from. We didn't have to spend it that year.
What was the cost difference between ed techs before Augusta got their fingers in the pie?
Some of them
What's the
were,
differential that you're now faced with?
I think we were
It's a state
better
aid.
than minimum wage. I think we started at about $15 for an ed tech, which that now position is going to be $18.61.
What was the aggregate cost that went into the budget?
I can't tell you what
Do
the
you have any idea?
175,000. I know mine was 175,000.
increase.
Just for that,
Right, that's just for the ed techs, and Bonnie alluded to this earlier, if you had an entry-level position that was 15 and now it's 18, then you had to meet with the union and bump up all those other folks that have been here 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So that caused that increase of $175,000, and that's just in ed techs. You also have the state statute for all other support staff, which includes custodians and bus drivers. So all the, and cafeteria work, so all those had to be lumped together. So I'd say probably the total aggregate is probably between 250 and 300.
That's why I think we figured out 268 actually.
I think it's hit everybody, everywhere.
And as the state is prone to say they pay for unfunded mandates, I challenge you to find it in the EPS formula, because it is not spelled out clearly. Right, it is not spelled out clearly that the state said that they would help pay for this. It's not there.
The bill was passed, when the bill was passed, the state would pay that in perpetuity, the differential. And when it was jammed into a budget document off the appropriations table, they stripped out the in perpetuity, said the state would pay it one time, and then you're on your own for the rest of it.
But they haven't even really been able to figure out yet how they're even going to do that, because in our registration with NEO and all that, we've had to put in what we paid for salary, what we paid last year, hourly, what we paid this year, and they're going to try to figure it all out, because I feel it's sort of like FEMA. Let me just talk a little bit about FEMA.
I hear you. Okay.
I'd like to just note that that doesn't happen at the town level, because when minimum wage goes up, other people's wages don't automatically go up. So I don't know if that's a union thing
It is.
or what it is, but
That's it is. That's exactly what it is.
because we had minimum wage dollar amounts for a couple of years, so minimum wage kept creeping closer and closer to people who had worked for the town for decades, and they didn't automatically get that, and they still don't. They
Right.
beat me.
Well,
So
it
just so you know.
I know. Well, in years past, I mean, I feel we we really did a good job negotiating with our support staff, and they were aware of what the community could afford to pay. So that's why our minimum, our base pay was $15, and that was pretty good compared to some of our neighbors, but we were able to draw good people. But our increments of increase might have only been 50 cents, between years, or maybe 75, and when you get up to the wage
4%,
up,
yeah.
maybe $1. But this whole thing just sent us into a landslide, because, you can't expect someone that's worked here for 20 years to make less than somebody who's gonna start right now, not when you're dealing with a union.
Not when you're dealing with the
No.
union. That's right.
So, and it's not to say they don't deserve it, we have some really
I'm
great-
saying every ed tech deserves that and more.
Absolutely.
Right.
They do very hard work.
So I don't want anybody to think
No.
I just think that if Augusta had stayed out of it and let us do our own negotiating, everybody would have been happy.
Agreed.
Well, not maybe wicked happy, but at least satisfied, so.
Other questions that people may have?
How come your insurance went up so high? I mean, the town insurance, I don't know if you guys go through, you probably don't go through Maine Municipal, so put in. The town insurance went up 9%. Yours went up 13 and something.
13.8. It's based on our usage, so to speak, and we were 117% usage, so that jacked us up into the top bracket. I think the top I ended up for a few people being as much as 17%, so.
And the county was no different. The county was up 12% for health insurance. So 9%'s not bad.
And that's what we're saying. That's good.
Is enrollment increasing or decreasing? I think I know the answer to that, but.
This year's gone down a little,
Okay.
but it's a crapshoot.
It is, I totally understand that, I was just curious.
I think we're down 10 students, actually, this year, to start. And right now, I can't remember what the beginning was, so we might have made that back up. Our problem is we have a couple of grades that only have 31 or 25 kids in it. And ninth grade next year coming in, we'll have 25, and this year's going out is 43. So that's 18 difference right there. But when you add all the numbers together, the high school is only off by 6 from what they are this year. And the middle school, which has another one of those grade fluctuation, is going to be actually up 8. So.
But it's been quite a while since there's been 700, 800 kids in this district.
I started over here, and there were 327 kids in the junior high when I started. Wow.
I think that's probably one of the most confusing parts of it for a lot of people, myself personally, because, and I understand you have to have a teacher, whether they teach 5 kids or 25 kids, but to look at a budget that's that high and to see the enrollment be so low, it's difficult to, and we don't have a mill. Years ago, we had a mill. The mill paid $1 million in taxes.
I know.
So,
$4
$4 million in taxes. Thank you, Tim.
It's unfortunate. It is hard to swallow. I get that, but it's like me going to the grocery store when there were 5 of us in the house. I could feed all 5 of us for $25 a week. And today, I go to the grocery store with just me, and I spend over $100, and I probably go back a second time before the week's over. So unfortunately, even though our population goes down, nothing's staying down. Everything's going up. The gas that we spent 99 cents for now is $2.66, and that's 30 cents cheaper than it is in Farmington. So, it's unfortunate. It is the way it is. And no, I can't give you a great answer, Julie, on that one. I can't. Other than to say, I'm sure you feel it when you go to the grocery store or put gas in your car, just like all of us.
I do, and sometimes I don't spend the money, and I go, I don't go without you know, but there are people who do go without, and they live in this town, and they're gonna get a tax bill that's based on everything that we're asking for, town, county, and school. So that's why I'm asking a question. I'm not trying to imply or say outright that these kids don't get a good education, because they do. Do I want to work in schools? No, I do not. Do I respect people who work in schools? Yes, I do. I just know that there are a lot of people in this town that are retired or close to retirement, and that they're going to be surprised by their tax bill for many reasons. And if they never say, oh, that school, they say, oh, that town, why are they paving the roads, or whatever, fill in the blank, so,
I understand that.
yeah.
I have to tell you that, that this guy on the other side, who we call that guy, for a number of reasons, has worked us hard this year to be sure that there is no fluff. And I can assure you, there is no fluff. There just isn't anywhere else to cut. If we don't pass a budget tonight and we have to go back to the drawing board, then we will be looking at programs and teachers. And just, that's the only place that there's any variable in money anymore, is the people that you employ. So, and I'm not trying to say that as a bribe, I'm just being real.
And the sports, and I know we won't.
Well, that's.
And I know we won't get sports, so,
Right. And the needs are a lot higher now
Yeah.
than they used to be.
yes.
And it is a lot different than it used to be. Any other questions?
So, getting back to the whole student population and everything, what is the average cost per student for an education? And I imagine that it's gonna change from elementary to middle school to junior, senior high. Oh,
And I didn't bring that paper with me that had all those figures on it, but I think we figured it varies by district, again, depending on what they get.
but for
For us,
Madison,
I'm gonna say probably around 13,000. Am I high on it?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I would say it's around there. Speak it now, Bill.
and is that about standard for Somerset County and our region?
At one point in time, one of the meetings I did, Carraback, Madison, Skowhegan, Farmington, and I don't know, there was 5 of them, and we were like right in the middle. Do I have it? Thank you.
Woo-hoo!
18, right.
13 was back when I joined the board 15 years ago.
Bingham is 22,000, Farmington's 19,000, Skowhegan's 17, almost 18,000. Carraback's almost 19. 58 is 18,500, and we're 18,345.
So, not the lowest, but certainly not the highest.
Right in the middle.
Okay. And what about our annual scores? Where do we place in the state of Maine for our student education scores?
Reading, math, and
Right. I'm going to say we're probably in the maybe mid to lower end of that, but I also don't put a lot of value in those scores, and I'm going to tell you why. Because over the last 5 or 6 years, we've changed, every time we turn around, what company is giving us we were doing the Maine Educational Assessment, then we went to the NWEAs. And then the NWEAs used to give you a range that was above and below grade level by a couple of grades. And now we're like, that doesn't happen anymore. The kids can't switch up to go to a lower level on a test. So, and comparing us to Yarmouth or Portland or some of the Dr. Lurie or Indian Chief communities, I think we do pretty darn well for what we do. But I can't tell you that I have a lot of value in where we place compared to the state. Does that make sense?
Yes. But, all right, so let me follow up on that one, and I thank you for letting me ask these questions. What about the kids that graduate from Madison? Where do they stand when it comes time to finding a job or going on to secondary education?
Well, I think and Jamie probably can help me with this one, but I think last year at graduation, we had maybe 3 or 4 that were going into the workforce, maybe 1 or 2 that were going into the military, and all the rest were off either to voc school or to, you know, at a four-year college. So I think we do pretty darn well.
Thank you.
And I might have missed it by 1 or 2, but I don't think by much. So I think when I first came to Madison, there was a lot of push for Ivy League school. And I think over time, people have come to a better understanding that there are more kids that in our area that may be suited for the trades. So a lot more is being done with that. And kids that are in the welding program, a lot of them are getting apprenticeships to work for Chimbro during the summertime. Again, I think we had maybe 1 or 2 last year that went in the military, and 2 or 3, and I can't tell you what's going to happen this year, but I wouldn't guess it's much different than that.
And do we have a good graduation rate, 90 and above? For the kids that start in kindergarten?
And again, that's a little bit,
The kids that start in kindergarten.
if we got the ones that really start in kindergarten, go all the way through, I would say we have to be in the 90 percentile.
That's awesome.
Yeah. A lot of them do move
And move in.
and different ones come in, yeah. Yes.
One thing that could skew that number is right, wrong, or indifferent. You know, Somerset County and our areas around here become transient. So, you know, to track K-12, I mean, what if a kid starts here and goes to Young? Or what if a kid from, I don't know, I'm not trying to pick on any schools, but Ashley comes to Madison, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I just meant
There's
K
a
through
lot more
12 in
of that.
general, but if
The
you
days
start
of-
with 50 kids at the beginning of the year, do you have 45 kids graduate at the end of the year? If they've made it all the way to senior year, it'd be great to know that, you know, that they can finish out.
Right, I truly believe the
Thank you,
kids,
Dave.
the kids that live here and have lived here, we're pretty darn successful with.
Great.
We do have a fair amount of transient population, as Ted says.
How about the teachers with the stress that they're under these days? How is that working for you guys?
We're in good shape. We have some really wonderful teachers, and we have some that, like me, are petrified for us, but still doing a good job, you know? And we were fortunate with COVID that we were able to hire some young folks. The principals went over to UMF to the job fair a couple of years ago, and we were able to entice 3 or 4 new teachers to come from that. And then through people retiring, we were able to keep those young people. So we're in good shape.
That's good, yeah. I just worry sometimes when you hear about the folks who are leaving the profession because of whatever. That's a lot.
I think that has a lot to do, honestly, with we have some great administration, and they support their teachers, and we have great parents who also support their teachers.
Thank you.
Mr. Goffin, do you feel supported?
Me? Absolutely, but I do like to make a point though that now that you have, because the state of Maine was one of the few states, I believe like 8 states, that didn't allow us to collect Social Security and Maine State Retirement, and finally it was changed. So now you can collect both, because if you pay into both, sorry, you don't get both. Now my thing is, to bring up that subject is, you may have some teachers now saying, well, I put 20 years in, I'm going to the private sector and look at my, because I can collect both now. Could that happen? Maybe, I don't know. I'm here for a long haul.
To go back to that just for a minute, we've had over the years a number of teachers from this district that have been nominated for Teacher of the Year. And actually, Kathy Bertini, 3 years ago, I think it was, or 4 years ago, actually was the Somerset County Teacher of the Year. We had one teacher that was nominated, we had several teachers that were nominated this year, but one that actually followed through with it. And that was Julie Wallace, she's our alternative ed teacher. And she made it to the semifinals, and unfortunately it was not a final, didn't make the final cut. She should have. I mean, she is an amazing program. amazing program for kids at risk. So to answer your question about what teachers and what it is different.
And I like that program.
Yeah,
That's
it
really-
is.
Yeah, that's a really neat program.
I'll keep at it.
All right.
Yeah. So, social media can be the best thing or the worst thing, we all know that. One of the comments that I happened to see today in regards to the school budget was, is it worth keeping the Madison identity, or should we be merging with another district? And what are the benefits and what are the pitfalls?
Well, there was a lot on social media apparently about me having secret meetings with Scott Egan. So,
Don't you hate those secret?
so I'll address a little of that. You know, I have been in this district 20 years. I value the character of this district. I feel if there were ever a day that you were going to do anything, it would be only to merge your high school, to keep your pre-K through 8 identity, because tradition is important in this town, very important. However, when I met with John Moody and we talked about merging the 2 schools, which would also have included him taking all of our high school staff. There was not going to be anybody without a job. Well, when you figure out what it costs, what it would save us, and turning this building over to the town, to be the town office and the rec center. But you would turn around and have to pay for the building now that the district did for insurance and upkeep. What it would cost for, what there would be savings versus revenue from doing that, we were going to be in the hole about $100,000. That was just doing rough estimate. So I kiboshed the conversation and said, now is not the time, especially with me living in, we've just reconfigured our schools to fit what we have right now. The perks would be, there would be more academic advantage for our high school kids. The Voc Center would be available to them starting their freshman year, not like we do as our junior and senior year. So there are really some benefits, but you're going to have to decide, are you willing to pay for those benefits? Because it isn't going to be a huge savings for you if you did merge. Yes.
What about merging with a district about the same size like Harapac, for instance, and combining districts and doing it something like that instead of specifically tuitioning our students to another high school?
We've talked a lot about that back when Mike Tracy was superintendent in Harapac. We had a number of meetings to try to have a conversation, but there did not seem to be a willingness, whether it was sports or it was academic or teachers or location, that could be worked out at that time. Now, in the future with Mark Campbell and whomever takes my place, maybe.
Other question, I know we kind of talked about it earlier, but I guess, and I'm new to this whole budget thing, so it might be something I'm missing, but I am still confused on this balance forward, where you said we only have to have 5%, but you're petitioning for 9%, which 9% you said would be 1.1 million, we're putting in 1 million. Last year we put in 900,000. I'm wondering what is currently in, what's being rolled forward, like what are we adding this to?
That money is part of your budget, that's what pays down your budget. So say we put 900,000 balance forward into this year's budget, and we only spent 600,000 of it. Then that 300,000 is going to move into the next year's undesignated funds.
Right.
So that little extra, that we have $1 million this year that's rolled forward, is some of what was left from, saved from last year.
So the million is part of what's being rolled forward from last year?
That's undesignated funds, yes.
Okay.
That makes sense?
So the total line would just be $1 million, that's what's gonna be in that total line of balance forward? Because you're saying,
There was still-
that you wanted 9%, which is 1.1 million, but if we're rolling $1 million into it, is the total line now $1 million, or was there funds in that budget line already?
There potentially could be another 1.1 or 2 million in that undesignated fund by the end of this school year.
So then we're going to have 2.1 million in there, which is way over the 5% that's recommended.
Go ahead, Dennis, explain.
I'm sorry, I'm missing something.
It's confusing.
For all municipal governments, school districts, towns, and counties, undesignated fund balance is always a mystery. Because you don't know exactly what it is until you get your audit back. And so we'll close this fiscal year in less than 2 months. The rest of May and June, the fiscal year will be done. Holly will send all the data to our auditors. They'll work it up. Best case scenario, we'll have an audit back by October. Lately, it's been much later than that. So once you get that audit back, you turn to page 15 and you look. I do this every year with every audit. It's like, what's our undesignated fund balance? And it's right there on that line. You can compare from year to year to year. So at our audit that was done from the last budget, the last fiscal year, this is where it gets confusing. Now we're talking about the last fiscal year, the one we're now, and the one you're voting on tonight. So you really got 3 of them juggling at once. So that last audit we had showed us that $2.4 million of undesignated fund balance. And our auditor, like they always do, puts a little note in the audit saying, hey, your fund balance is high. State law says it should be 9% or 1.1 million. So that's why every year the school board picks a number that they're going to take out of that 2.4 million and carry it forward. Tricky part though is you're using that 2.4 million from 2 years ago. It's changing because last year, like you saw, we took 900,000 of it. Are we going to use all that 900,000? Probably not. Let's say we use 500,000 of it. So that 400,000 goes back. So your 2.4 has gone down by 900 to make it 1.5, but it's going to go up by another 400 to make it 1.9 because you're not going to spend all 900 to put it that's last year. The question, I get looks, okay, that guy. The question the taxpayer should be asking is, your budget was $1.3 million last year. How much did you spend? Because that number is going to impact the fund balance, right? So you raise from taxation, whether it's state tax or local tax, you raise from taxation 11.3 million. You may only spend 10.6. So that extra money goes back into fund balance. During COVID, this is where we got out of whack a little bit because we had some years where we were budgeting 11 million and we weren't even spending 10 million. So you had that $1 million surplus that went back. So strategically, the board has, and state law gives you 3 years to work this out because you're always budgeting or juggling these 3 budgets. So they give you 3 years to try to wean that fund balance down to where it should be at 9%. The confusing part about the 5%, years ago before COVID, state law said you could only keep 5%. And so after COVID, they said, well, let's extend this for the schools so they have a little more cushion because you don't know what's going to happen. And so now in the legislature, they're most likely going to extend that 9% because, can't believe anybody has asked this question. There's a lot of insecurity with the federal government right now, and we get federal funds.
It was coming.
That's another question you should be asking, right? So that's my 3-minute tutorial on fund balance.
So Tim, you mentioned 2 years ago, you mentioned $2.4 million could have been rolled forward. Where's that money sitting for 2 years?
Okay, so fund balance is a figure that's on your audit. It is different than what you've got in the bank. So money in the bank and fund balance are 2 different things. It's actual cash on hand and what the audit says you should keep. So as Holly is paying the bills every month, that cash on hand is fluctuating. It's rarely ever equal to that $2.4 million.
Sure.
So that money comes in from the state, because we get a payment from the state, we get a payment from the town office every month, so that money comes in and we make payments out, so it always kind of rotates through. That's really the only money that's sitting anywhere earning interest.
Yeah, but $2.4 million 2 years ago, that's a significant amount to not collect any interest or something. Like, it just can't be on paper, right?
Well, you got money coming in somewhere. You got that $2.4 million is a snapshot of what you had on June 30th. All right, the bankers are nodding with me, so I know I'm in good shape. That's a snapshot of what you had on June 30th of 2023 or 2024.
Sure.
So it doesn't reflect all the money that's coming through the district at all times.
And also, does somebody know for a guarantee that the state funds are gonna be there when we need them in this budget?
State funds, I think, are pretty secure. I mean, that's already been passed in the first half of this budget, is to fund school education and the level that they anticipate. So state funding shouldn't be an issue. We have a lot of
Federal money.
Title I money.
We have about 700,000 in federal money that we are told we probably will be good until October, but we don't know for sure what's going to happen after that.
So is this budget reflecting the possibilities of losing it in October?
Yeah.
That's why I
Have
think
you
that's
guys
one.
have you guys thought about what we're gonna do if we don't get it?
Spend down the fund balance.
We can only spend down 300,000 of it.
Can I ask a question about the 300,000? Because we do capital projects at the town level, but they have to be specific to the department. The 300,000 that's coming out of your undesignated fund balance, is that, so don't panic, Tim, because I'm gonna become that woman that is saying these things. Is that a sneaky way of getting some of our extra money out of the undesignated fund balance, so we can just let it sit there and not have it count? Or is it really going to be designated to
Right.
be used
Right.
for
So-
something specific?
I don't think it's sneaky at all. I think it's very intentional that this board has the power to designate some of that money. And so if we don't want to add more money to next year's budget for capital projects, we can designate some of this surplus now for capital projects, and it'll have to come to you, the voters, every year thereafter.
So the capital money has to be determined separate from, it can't just be, like, I can't spend my capital money on candy bars, you know. I can't just buy what I feel like buying with it. It has to be like, okay, we want to do this project, and then the
It
town
has to
people
come
have
to
to vote on it.
the board to be voted on. But each year, you as a voter would have to vote to put it into the capital fund.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Yep.
sure, thank you.
I just want to clarify, so that 300,000 is coming from the
Designated.
undesignated funds. No, that's not what we have left over that you just wanted.
That's correct. It's
Okay.
coming from the undesignated fund balance, which is money that's already been raised by taxes.
Okay, so that's, right.
I got kind of two questions. One is the elementary school all paid off? We got into that?
Yes.
That is paid off, okay. And number two is, do we still buy a bus every year, or is that not new too?
No, we bought 3 new buses when we had COVID money.
Okay.
So we're all set for a little bit.
Okay.
If we were buying one, it would be in the budget, but we would be refunded the next year from the state.
Oh, okay.
We pay forward and they pay back.
Can you use that 300,000 for that in the future?
Do you depreciate buses as capital? Then yes.
Isn't that?
No, I know, but in the future, if it's there.
Is it more for maintenance?
It is.
I think it's more
That would have to go in that.
So if you needed to replace a boiler or a roof or something like that.
One of the things we have.
I'm sorry.
One of the things as far as the capital, I'm not objecting to the capital line because we have, the schools we have we have 2 schools that are pretty near 20 years old or more. And so we're gonna have to start thinking about this and if we're putting this money away, it makes sense. And that way we don't have, oh my God, we gotta spend $100,000 for a boiler. I remember a few years ago, 7, 8 years ago, we did, maybe longer ago than that now, we did that energy efficiency bond thing. That's,
That won't be paid off until 30.
that's 2030, right? Yeah. But we can't use that for, I mean, that, that's not a capital expense, but repairs and stuff like that, that would
I
all.
think this building in the high school are 1986 or 87, so a little more than 20. MES was 2001, I think, so Yeah, they're getting up there. We need to do something about these skylights. Anybody that builds a school in Maine today with skylights in it, it's nuts. They leak.
But for the most part, there's been a lot of upgrades that we've done over the last 12, 15 years, and little windows, heating systems, roofs. During COVID, we spent the money on technology,
Right. Telephone system,
new telephone system,
new
upgraded,
accounting system.
stuff. Nobody would have had to go out to the taxpayer, still taxpayer money, it's not local money, but as far as the schools themselves, other than the skylights, they're very good shape. So, that isn't an issue, but I think it's a real issue of, the town really needs to decide what it wants to do, because these numbers are only gonna go down, student-wise, and the cost per student's gonna go up. Merging with Skowhegan may not have been the answer, but I think serious talks need to happen between Madison, Bingham, and Anson. Because if you put all three of those high schools together, you'd still have less than 450 kids.
Given the state's budget situation, that may not be an option. You may be told. You may be
That's
voluntold.
my fear, because that came out a week or two ago when they came out with what, 11 billion, 12 billion shortfall with capital improvements for schools over the next 20 years. And one of the three options is consolidation. So I still say, do it while you have a choice before it's mandated. Because like what happened to us with merging with Pittsfield and that whole superintendent fiasco. You wait till it's dictated and it's not going to be
I agree.
what you want.
I agree.
I think it's something
you
that
have fiscal control.
discussions should, there should be talks at least as to.
And I agree with Bonnie, with all the changes going on right now, with the federal funding and the superintendent change and all of that, it's not the right time to be involved in talks like that. But just so everybody knows, there's 8 people up here. 4 of them are going to be different by July. So you have 3 new board members coming on, and then you have a new superintendent coming on. So I would imagine next summer, next fall, that there'll be some proactive work about having conversations about what to do. And if consolidation works, then that would be certainly one of the jobs of the new board and new superintendent.
Other than Title I, is there any other federal money that we count on that we may not be able to access?
Well, it's more than just Title I, it's Title I, Title II, Title 4, local entitlement, which is part of special ed, which is some of our ed checks. We're looking at about $700,000 for all of them. They're basically positions, teachers, and ed techs. And we would be mandated to keep up with the special ed, we have to, that's law. So what could potentially be hit, and we're gonna be looking at, might be what we do with Title I or Title II. But we hope that doesn't happen. We hope.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Title I does, helps kids that are behind. Is that what it is?
Math and reading.
Math and reading.
No,
It's not special ed.
it's not, it's, you know, we try to catch them before they get to that.
Gotcha.
And move them forward.
Tim, I'm proud of you. We did a good job educating you.
I try to listen. I lose interest sometimes, but I try.
Any other questions? We have 6 minutes before the schedule is not the regular budget.
Why is
Yes.
the extracurricular going up so much for next year?
Because we moved transportation costs from transportation into co-curricular where we always have to transfer money from transportation into co-curricular. So this year we actually put it where it belonged. So I think you will see that transportation has gone down some.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, that's a good catch. because that's- Any other questions? 5 minutes. Or we're
Want
gonna
to
be ready to start the next meeting.
Or can they go register yet?
I don't know, can they register as yet?
Julie, when can we sign in?
Can they
When can we
register?
sign in?
They can't vote yet, they can register.
Everybody needs to go out and then come back in the doors where the table is there, and then we'll check everybody in. If anybody is not a registered voter, they need to sit at one of the assigned tables.